Welcome. In this webinar, what we're going to do is we're going to speak mainly about pavers and different paver techniques. This is a supplement to the standard video tutorials which come with the program. Hopefully you've watched those video tutorials and have been using the techniques that we show there, but this is going to take it another step further and not quite as far as like our advanced tutorials that we also have available. So it's kind of an intermediate level paver tutorial. So we just want to steer you down the right course as far as drawing in your pavers, because I think some of you are missing out on some of these techniques which can improve your drawing skills when drawing in your paver materials.
Okay.
So let's get started by talking about some of the standard paver tools. So on the EasyScape toolbar, I have here the paver path tool, which we have a lot better ways to draw in paver paths, at least in my opinion, than the paver path tool. We also have the closed paver tool, which is a very good functional tool, so we'll use that quite a bit. But under the draw menu up here, if we go into pavers, you're going to see several other pavers like the rectangle paver, rotated rectangle, elliptical, closed paver is the same one that we see on the EasyScape toolbar. The spline, which gives us a freeform curved paver, same way with a fitted curve. Okay, we also have some boulders and stepping stones here. Okay, and then we have a paver fill tool. Okay, now up here at the top, these are the ones that are somewhat new with the program. So if you have a version 17 or 18 and higher, you're going to see the tools up here at the top, which are very useful tools, and that's a lot of what we're going to be concentrating on is the paver edge tool, offset, create offset edge and paver, and then of course the create paver from edges. So whenever we're drawing in pavers, it's important, if you're drawing it, you want to use the snap tools. Now hopefully you've watched the snap tool video tutorial, and the snap tools, it changes the behavior of where you're clicking or where you're snapping your lines to. So if I was to select, say, a closed paver, and if I don't have my snap tools on, I can come in and I can click in here and I can place a driveway like so. However, a lot of times when I don't use my snap tools, you'll see that there's a gap. It's easy to create a gap. So if I came in here later and wanted to fill in grass or mulch, it may leak through this gap. Now technically, when we place a paver, we want to place it at the center of the foundation wall. Okay, so if I turn on my endpoint snap tool by pressing the E key on the keyboard or tapping here, okay, you'll see that when I click on this vertice point and pull it up, it pulls it to the end point of that foundation wall. Okay, if I have the nearest point snap on, which is the letter N on the keyboard, and I pull it up, you'll see that it wants to adhere to the center line of that foundation wall. So when I would go in here and fill in with grass, it's not going to leak through this area here. Okay, so it's important here to whenever we're drawing in pavers, to use snap tools to help us through this process. What we're going to do here is I'm just going to draw in a quick driveway, and I can come in and I can snap to a corner, and I can come down here and snap to another corner. Okay, now another trick that we can do here is if we want these lines to be nice and straight, so if I want this perfectly straight with a grid, I can hit the O key on the keyboard, and that gives me a nice straight line like so. And I would put a point down, and then when that vertical line gets pretty straight, I'll go ahead and click again, and then I'll right click, and that'll create that paver with a nice rectangular area. Okay, let's go ahead and cut that out of there. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to redraw our driveway, and we're going to use the closed paver tool, and then I'm going to use my endpoint snap. I'm going to snap to this point here. Okay, and I'm going to come over and snap to this one. Now, we have something called a normal lock, which will allow us to come straight down. Now, the ortho lock, which is the O key, will also allow us to do either vertical or horizontal lines and not diagonal lines. So in some cases we may want to use the ortho lock to lock it to the grid. But in this case, what I want to do, and I keep in mind I started here and I came over here and clicked down, or clicked over, and then now I want to go down, but what I'm going to hit is the L key, which is the normal lock. So what the normal lock does is it gives me a perfectly 90-degree angle on this corner here. Okay, so I'm going to come down the distance that I want. I'll just click there, and then I'll move over. All right, now if you have version 23, I believe, maybe 24, if you come in here, you'll see that you now have this connector line that goes up to the starting point. And if I go up, I have my endpoint snap on, and I click on this point. The first click, what it does is it clicks a point on the lower left-hand corner of this paver driveway, and then a second click, what that does is it puts a point here on the original starting point, but it gives me a perfectly 90-degree angle on this last one. So the L key allowed me to lock it to the grid based on the angle that I have on this first line here. So I'm going to right click, and now it's going to be perfectly aligned with that foundation wall. Now, it doesn't really matter when you use this normal lock key if your foundation is set even with the grid. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to rubber stamp it, pull it out here, and then I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to use that same technique. Okay, so I'll use my close paver, I'll click here, come over to here, I'll hit the L key on the keyboard, and that gives me a perfect 90-degree angle based on that first line that I drew there. Okay, and then I'll come over, and then I don't know where to stop there, so I'm going to come up here, and this is again with the endpoint snap on. I'll click here, and then I'll click again, and that sets it down, and I'll right click. Okay, so it's a very easy way to set a paver down at an angle and have the line set to the center of the foundation wall. Okay, let's go ahead and get rid of these. All right, so next what I'm going to do here is I want to do a sidewalk from the front door here over to the driveway. Now, some of you may use, say, the paver path tool to do that. I have a better way to create this pathway using a paver edge tool. Now, the paver edge tool is found under Draw, Paver, and Edge. Okay, and the paver edge tool, I want you to think of it as a framing tool that you're going to use to frame in a paver area. So the paver edge tool, you'll see here that up in the edit bar, it allows us to do various line styles. Okay, so we can do straight lines, we can do polylines, curves, circles, and that type of thing. Okay, if on this case I'm going to use a simple polyline. Okay, and then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to let's turn off my endpoint snap by hitting the E on the keyboard, and I'm going to start my line here, and then I'm going to come straight down. Again, if I want to use the O key, that will give me a straight line. And I'll click there, and I'll come over to the driveway, and again, if I hit my N on the keyboard, it's the nearest point, so it allows me to snap directly to that paver area. Okay, I'm done at that point, so I right click. Okay, so there's the one side of this sidewalk. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up to the Draw menu and go to Pavers, and there's an Offset Edge tool. If I click Offset Edge, you'll see up here in the Edit bar, it has this triangle, the triangle here is the offset distance. So it's currently set at 4 feet offset. Okay, so if I go over and I mouse over this line, I can go 4 feet this direction, or if I just go on the other side of it, I can go 4 foot on the other side. and I'll click with a left click, and that will put that pathway there. Okay, so it's the paver edge tool is allowing me to frame in this area. Now I don't have to close off the ends of this. It'll know with the next step to automatically close these open ends. All right, so the next step here is to go to Draw and Pavers and create paver from edges. Okay, now this tool is going to allow me to select the first line and then the second polyline, and then if I right click, what that does is it converts it to a paver area. So instead of two linear measurements here, it's going to be able to calculate the square footage of the pavers within this area. Okay, now if I would have used a different line type like a curve, I could come in and do a spline curve through here and then offset it the same way that I did this polyline.
I have a question. How would I create a radius on the corner of the sidewalk there?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. I think some people, what they would do is they would, if they want to create an arc along here, is they would use the trim corner tool. And the trim corner tool is found under the edit menu and trim, and then it actually is the trim round tool, not the trim corner tool.
Okay.
Okay, and then with the trim round tool, what it does is it gives me the ability to set a radius for the rounding there. So if I want that to be, say, a 4-foot radius, I'll change it there. I'll click on this line here and then this line here, and what that does is it gives me a radius there. If I want to click here and click here, it gives me a radius there. Well, the problem with using this technique to do a rounded corner there is the radius here is not going to be the same as here. So what it did is it created a 4-foot radius on both of them, and then I have a much wider area through this elbow here than I do along the vertical straight area and then the horizontal straight area. So I have a better way of treating this. So what I'm going to do here is, let's go ahead and grab this and bump it out of the way, and we'll go back up to Draw Paver Edge. Okay, and then I'm just going to, this is a polyline edge, so I'll click here. And again, I'll hit the O key on the keyboard, click, and come over to the driveway, click. Okay. All right, now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, I can now use the trim round. So if I go up to Edit, Trim, Round, again I'll keep the 4-foot radius. I'll click on the vertical and the horizontal line, and it gives me a radius. Now what I'll do is I'll offset it, and let's see what the result is when we offset. So if I go to the Draw menu, go to Pavers, and let's go ahead and do Offset Edge. Okay, now when I mouse over this and click, okay, it gives me a much more consistent distance in between those two lines. All right, so once we get that in there, we would just use the Create Paver from Edges. So I'll go up to Tools, to Draw, Paver, and Create Paver from Edges. Click on the first line and then second, and then right click, and it converts that to a paver area. Okay, so the result being a much more consistent curvature through that corner there than we had here previously. Okay, so you want to use the offset edge on the first edge, and then you'll round the first edge, and then you'll offset that first edge to give you a more consistent radius there.
Ah, that makes sense.
All right, good. All right, now some other thing that we can do here is we can merge these two shapes into one. So I have a driveway and I have a sidewalk. Now this technique, it does require that the lines are matching up. So again, I had used the snap tool to snap directly to here, so I don't have a gap here. If I have a gap, this is not going to work. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to select one, hit the Shift key on the keyboard to select the other paver area, and then if I right click on that area now, I can select Join Pavers. Okay, and now it's one continuous paver area without the seam in between the two. All right, so let's go ahead and try some of the other techniques using the Paver Edge tool. Up on the Draw menu, we'll go to Paver Edge. Okay, and what I'm going to do here is I want to do a patio around the corner of this house with a contoured edge, and we'll just do it all the way around there. So I'll select my Paver Edge tool, and I'll go up to the edit bar, and you'll see there's several different line types here. I like the open spline to do a curved bed. So what I'll do is I'll click here. Again, I have my nearest point snap on, so it's snapping directly to that foundation wall. Okay, and I'll just bring a curve out here. Several clicks around here like so. It acts just like edging does if we were to draw in edging. Okay, now if you need to, you can come in and you can double click on it, and you can adjust the vertice points here to change the curvature. Very easy. Now, if you're on version 23 or lower, it's going to you're going to have green points there, so there is a little bit of a difference there in the lower versions. Okay, and we need to draw a line to trace out the foundation to create a secondary line to create this paver area. So I'm going to use a polyline. So we'll go to Draw Paver Edge, and we'll go up to the selector in the edit bar, and I'll select a polyline. Okay, I'll start here, and I'll trace over to the end point. Let's go ahead and hit the E on the keyboard to find the corner, and then I'll find the end of the other edge with a click, and then I'll right click. Okay, so that created two pieces of edging. So I have this piece and then the L-shaped piece here. Okay, so now that I have those, I'm going to create a paver from edges here. So Draw, Paver, and Create Paver from Edges. I'll click on the curve. I'll go to the L-shaped polyline, click on that, and I'm done at that point. So I'll right click, and it converts it to a paver shape. Okay, now if I wanted to do say a sidewalk coming along here, I could use a closed paver just like I did the front sidewalk. Again, I'll hit the O key on the keyboard to give me a nice straight line over here, and I'm just going to set an arbitrary width on this, like so. Okay, looks like I did not snap to that, so I'm going to bring that down. I'm in the edit vertice mode. I'll bring it down to the foundation wall, like so. Okay. All right, now these are overlapping, so if I need to join these, I can do that very easily here. So I'll select the first one, I'll hit the Shift key on the keyboard, I'll select the second, I'll right click and select Join Paver, and it makes it one continuous paver area. By the way, the join that we just had shown you there, if you are doing a mulch area and you have overlapping mulches, what you can do is you can use the right-click menu and select Join Mulch, the same way we did here with pavers. Also, if you have a grass area, you can select the two grass areas and join those as well.
Along the right side of the house, what's the best way to draw a 4-foot sidewalk but have it positioned 3 foot from the foundation?
Sure. Okay, so what you want is you want a sidewalk along this side, but you want it offset a ways out here, and then you want to set a distance. That's pretty easy to do, and it's very similar to what we did up here on the front. Yeah, so let's go ahead and try that. I'll go up to well, let's first, what we need to do is we need to create a line here. If I go up, let me show you why we're not going to do it a certain way here. If I go up to Offset Edge, and I mouse over this edge, it's taking an edge all the way around either this or the foundation wall, and I don't want the edge to go all the way around it. I just want it to go parallel to this foundation wall. So what I'll do is, again, I'll use my Paver Edge tool. Okay, and let's go ahead and just do a straight line. So I'm going to start here and just follow this down to the other end point. Okay, so I have a piece of edging there. Okay, and now I'm going to, let's go to Draw, Pavers, and then Offset Edge. Okay, so the offset edge, let's set the distance to 3 feet would be the offset amount. Okay, so now when I mouse over that foundation wall, you'll see that it has an offset line available. Now if I come over here, you'll see it reverts back to the actual foundation wall, but over here it's actually picking up the edging, the Paver Edge tool, rather than the foundation wall. So I'll click there. Okay, and now I'm just going to use the draw menu. Let's go again, Draw, Paver, and I can offset the edge. We also have another tool which basically combines the offset edge and the create paver from edges tool in one. It's the create offset edge and paver. Okay, so if I click on that, okay, and I mouse over this line, okay, it's wanting to offset it a certain distance. Now if I go up here to the edit bar and I decide I want that to be a 4-foot width path, I just put a 4-foot distance there, and I mouse over, and now it's a 4-foot width, and I click. Okay, and you'll see what that did is it offset the edge, and then it also filled it in. So it's 2 tools in one there. Okay, now if you were wanting to combine these, you could again select one, hit the shift key on the keyboard, and select the other paver area, and again right click, join paver, and there you go. So that should be exactly 3 feet there, and then 4 feet wide here.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, good. All right, so all right, next what we're going to do is we're going to do a pool deck up here. We're going to demonstrate a tool that's called the Insert Poly tool, which is a very useful tool. First, I'm going to draw in a paver. It's just going to be a simple rectangular paver area like so. Okay, and we're going to go over to our symbol library, and I'm going to go into miscellaneous and then pool. Okay, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a pool in, and we're going to trace that pool out. Now you'll notice that when we put the pool here, it puts the or it has the pavers already underneath the pool area. Okay, and we don't want the pavers to show through the pool. Okay, so we also don't want it to calculate the pavers underneath the pool here. Okay, so we're going to use a technique. It's called the Insert Poly tool, and to use this, I'm going to come over and I want to trace out the portions of the symbol that I don't want the pavers to show through or be calculated with. So I'll use my Close Paver tool here, and I'm going to just let's go ahead and just snap to the corners of this like so. Okay, and I need to create a couple more points here, so I'm going to go into the edit vertice mode of the other paver there, and we're going to add a couple points. So I'll just add points there, and then I'll put another point there, and we'll put one there. Okay, now you should also, when you're in the edit vertice mode and you want to bulge an area or create an arc, what you can do is you can hold the control key down on the keyboard, and then you can pull that arc out. Okay, well, I didn't quite get that. Let me turn on or off some of these snap tools. So I'm going to pull that out. I didn't have the control key down there, so let's try that one more time. So I'll hold the control key down, pull it out, drop it, then come over here, pull this out, and drop it right there. Still didn't get there, so let's try that again. There we go. Okay, so I have a basically a paver with a pool sandwiched in between two different paver areas. Okay, so this is where the insert poly tool comes in handy. So on this smaller paver area, let's go ahead and change the hatch pattern here. Okay, so on this smaller paver area, what I'll do here is I'll right click on it. Okay, and we have an option to insert poly. Okay, now down here at the bottom of the program it says select the outer polygon to insert this polygon. So if we come in and we click on the edge of the larger paver area here, okay, that's going to flash, and you'll notice that what happened there, it does not have that other hatch pattern underneath there. So now if I click, well, let's see here. Okay, if I click on that paver area and I drag it off, okay, it's not calculating the paver underneath the pool. It's only going around the pool here. So if I look at the vertice points here, you'll see that it's only going to calculate the area that is here in pink. Okay, so that can be a very handy tool when you're putting in a pool, or say a fire pit, or maybe you have a tree ring that's inside of a paver area and you don't want to calculate those pavers. That's pretty easy to do.
When I'm placing furniture, it's hard to see because the paver pattern just kind of covers it up. Is there a way to make that stand out a little better?
Okay, so what you're asking is you're saying that when you put in furniture, the paver pattern, like this pattern, is showing through the furniture, making it difficult to see there. So let's go ahead and talk about that. I'll go up to the miscellaneous and the recreation. We'll go ahead and drag a patio set there, so it gets kind of busy when you see that on there. Let's go ahead and put a lounge on there like that. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is so that we can see these better, is I'm going to use a little bit of a technique, which is a fill technique, which is something we can do on, say, plant symbols and this type of thing. If we right click on a symbol like we have here, we can go to fill symbol, and I'm just going to choose any pattern, and it doesn't matter if I'm using a gradient pattern or a solid pattern. Okay, it's not terribly important there, and I'm going to go over to this as well and do the same thing. Again, I'll use the same color. Okay, now here I'm going to turn the hatch pattern off. Okay, so we're still calculating this paver area here. If I go up to the paint bucket up on the layer and property toolbar, you'll see the paint bucket here next to the hatch pattern. I'll just select none. Okay, so I turned it off. If I look at the properties of that, hit the question mark there, it's still calculating that at 731 square feet. Okay, now the trick here comes in with this fill tool. When I use that fill tool and fill in that with a color fill, I'm going to go over here to the hatch library. Now don't confuse the hatch library here with the hatch library that's up next to the paint bucket here. It's the same library, but it behaves differently when we use it from over here in the content librarian. So what I'll do here is I'll just pick a pattern. Let's go over to the pavers. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to grab one and drag it over into this area, and it fills it in there. I can go in and I can change the pattern if I need to. Let's go ahead and maybe make it a little more dense there using a scale of 10. And then I'll go in here, and on the symbols that I filled previously, I'll right click on them, fill symbol or remove fill. I'll come over here and right click, remove fill. Okay, so now we can see our furniture because the pattern is not interfering with the with how we're looking at that furniture. However, if I go in and if I see if I can get the edge of that, let's go ahead and separate that. You'll see that if I look at the properties of this, it's still 731 square feet. So the pattern is not part of the calculation when I drag it over from the library over here.
Can the ends of the sidewalk flare out where it meets the driveway?
Okay, so you want to create a flare down here on the sidewalk where it meets this. It probably would have been easier if I would have created the flare before joining the sidewalk to the driveway, but it's not going to be impossible here. So what we can do is I can get into the edit vertice mode. I can double click to get into the edit vertice mode. I need to add a point to the line here. So I'm just going to click, and I'll come over here, and I'll just kind of click here. Okay, so that adds a new point. Okay, and then this point here, I'll just pull it up slightly. Okay, and then we'll come down to this one and pull it down slightly like that. Okay, now if you wanted it to be more of a rounded flare there, you can do that pretty easily also by hitting the control key on the keyboard while you're in the edit vertice mode, holding down on the control key, and then pulling that in just a little bit. Let's go ahead and zoom in on that a little bit so we can see it better. Okay. Okay, so that gave me a little bit of a radius there. Let's go ahead and turn our snap tools off there. And we'll pull that up. Okay, and then I'll just come down here to the lower point. I'll do the same thing and just bump it up just slightly to create a little bit of a curve there. Okay, and you can also take those points and you can move them up the line a bit, or you can pull these in like so to create more of a flare like that. Okay. All right. So next, what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about how to add a soldier course to an area. Now, in some of the older versions, what you had to do, and this is prior to version 23, is you had to use, say, a closed paver tool, or one of the other paver tools like a circular or elliptical paver. You would use it, and then you would set up in the edit bar, you would set certain parameters. You would see a value that says add edging. If you check that, you're going to have some options like the soldier course distance and the offset width and that type of thing. You could set those up there. The problem with it is that you have to, it applies it after you've drawn it, and you really can't go in and modify it like you can with the newer version. So what we can do here is I can go in and I can just draw a closed paver area like so. Okay, doesn't really matter the shape here. I can also double click on it and come in and modify this at any time. If I need to bulge an area, I can again hold the control key and bulge it out like so. Okay, and then once I have the shape down the way I like it, okay, what we can do is, and again this is in version 23 and higher, is you can right click on it and you're going to have an option here to add soldier course. Okay, all right, so it's going to give us the material for the edging that we can choose, and then the edging width, which is currently set at 1 foot, and then the soldier course distance is currently set at 8 inches. Okay, so in version 23, what it would do is it's going to take this and it's going to change or add the soldier course to the outside. So it's going to enlarge this by a distance of 1 foot all the way around this area. But in version 24, what we did is we added the option to add it on the inside. So the soldier course is not going to be, or it is going to be set on the inside of this area. So let's go ahead and click OK. All right, and there it has added a soldier course all the way around there. So the 1 foot distance that I set there was from here to here. So it added, it inset that 1 foot distance there. The 8-inch distance that was on that previous box was the width of the stone. Okay, so it's 8 inches from here to here. Okay, now if I wanted the stones to go the opposite direction, then I would just flip those values. So instead of 8 and 1, it would be 1 foot and then 8 inches. Okay, so it would be 8 inches across here, and then these would be spaced at 1 foot apart.
Yeah, that seems easy enough.
Okay, so that's how we add a soldier course to an existing paver. So again, what you're going to do is you're going to define the shape of the area. And once you have the shape down the way you like it, whether you're using a closed polygon shape or closed paver, and then adding arcs to it or whatever, you're going to define the shape first, and then once you get the shape defined, you're going to right click on it and add soldier course. Okay, now you can do it to things like the driveway here. If I right click on it, and you can go to add soldier course. Now it can get a little bit temperamental if you have points that are stacked on top of points, so it can get a little flaky if you have points that aren't really needed. So let's see what happens when I do this one. So I'm going to right click on it, add soldier course. Let's go ahead and add it on the inside, and I'll just do a 6-inch wide this time, since I have a pretty narrow pathway. Okay, and I'll click OK. All right, so there it looks pretty good there. Now if I had an extra point down here on my shape that was really close to an end point, it may not shape it perfect. Now other things you may run into when you're doing a soldier course is if you have used the insert poly tool where you have a frame around an area like what we have here, it's not going to apply a soldier course correctly. You're going to get some crazy stuff here. So if I right click on that and add soldier course, you're going to see that there's these extra lines that go through here, so it's not going to be perfect. There are ways of doing this, which we talk about in some of the advanced tutorials, but essentially you have to add the soldier course first before you insert the inner area there. Okay. Now if I right click on this, it's not going to give me that option because this is not a paver area, so I don't get a soldier course option there. But if I remove that and then right click on the actual paver area instead of the hatch pattern, then it will give me a soldier course. Let's go ahead and try this one as well. So right click, add soldier course, inside, and I'll click OK. So that one, it did it okay just as well there. Okay. Okay, so the last thing that we wanted to show you here was it's more of a hatch technique than a paver technique, but it applies to pavers or just about anything else with a hatch pattern, and that's the ability to stack a hatch pattern. Now here I've got a paver area which this is part of the paver area. What we can do is we can go over here and we can stack several hatch patterns on top of here just by dragging and dropping these. Now if I have say a color fill and I drag it over like so, the problem with this is that it's sitting on top of my pattern, so I don't really see the brick pattern that's on here because this is sitting actually on a different layer. Okay, so when I drug this the color onto this area. It didn't drag it onto the paver layer. It actually drags it onto the annotation layer. Okay, so what we can do here is I can right click. Well, let's just select it here, and we'll go up to the layer and property bar where we see the annotation layer, and I'm going to go down and I'm going to select paver. Okay, so what that did is that moved that color fill onto the paver layer. Okay, so now it's a matter of actually layering the fill and the hatch pattern into the proper order. So on this one, what we can do is if you right click on it and you go to move to back, okay, and then I'll click off of it and I'll scroll out, and now it's moved it in back of that brick hatch pattern. So now we can see the color fill that's in the background and the brick pattern there. Okay, now another trick that it's relatively it's used here a lot when we do stack patterns is you'll notice that when I click on that, it's difficult for me to click on the color fill because that hatch pattern is now setting on top of it. Now this little trick that I'm going to show you also works with edging, where you have mulch that you've put on top or in an edged area. The mulch sits on top of the edging, making it very difficult to select that edging. So what we can do here is if I go in here and I hit the Alt key on the keyboard, let's go ahead and click off of that. I hit the Alt key on the keyboard and I click. Okay, what that does is it selects whatever is on top, and then I do a second click and it selects the next level down. So when I release the Alt key, now the color fill is selected. So if I wanted to go in and do something to it, whether I want to move it or move a vertice point on it or whatever, I can do that. Or maybe I want to come up here and just change it to a different color, or maybe just go in and select a gradient fill like so. And as soon as I click off of it, it resets everything. So now when I click back to it, it wants to select the hatch pattern. But if I want to select the underlying color, I can hit the Alt key, I can click again, and when I release the Alt key, the color fill pops up there and becomes selected. And you'll see it changes up here when I did that. Okay. All right, so hopefully these techniques will help you. Just keep in mind, very important that you want to really force yourself to use the paver edge tool to draw in paver areas, especially complex paver areas. If you're just doing a simple rectangle, you can use the rectangle or the rotated rectangle. But if it's a complex area with varied line styles like curves and arcs and straight lines, the paver edge tool is really a powerful tool. Also, don't forget the join paver tool, the create paver from edges tool, and also the insert poly tool that we showed you up here with the pool on the deck there. Okay, so I hope you got something out of the video, and I do thank you for watching.
Thanks.
And thank you.